So in the next podcast, or vcast, or vlog, I'm going to do something worldly and start opening this book and helping to understand some of the yant that are inside. But right now, first of all, I'm just going to take a bite of my first and not last meal of the day. It's now about 3 p.m. It's the second bite I've had. I'm going to leave it for now, because that's enough energy for me to keep going with for this talk. I might have to get up and go get some water. In fact, I'm going to get some now. Which is something I shouldn't drink. Soda water. With, of course, the famous Sing, which is a sakyant as well, and a yant. Because people know I like to take the word sak out of yant. Because sak means tattoo, and I'm interested in sacred geometry. I'm actually interested in creation, solving the mystery of creation, which begins with geometry. Everything from Pythagoras, Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, and all the others. Yeah, the philosophers and the geometricians, and Archimedes, the greatest mathematician in ancient history. And yant, if you look at quantum physics and geometry, you will see that the third dimension, so creation, this universe, the material universe, is constructed out of certain basic shapes. And if you study particle theory, and you've been a monk and meditated in a cave and understood the processes within your own self, of your perception, how it influences your consciousness, which influences your brain to create chemicals into your nervous system, which creates a feeling of wellness or unwellness, which we experience as emotion and think is name but not form, nama not rupa, whereas emotion is actually just an uncomfortable feeling within the nervous system. And notice things like this within yourself, and then study quantum physics and particle physics and subparticle physics, muons and gluons and quarks, yeah? And ups and downs and entanglement and the laws of thermodynamics, especially the second, with which I have a slight problem, and do mental experiments, which I do. I just tried with my girlfriend yesterday, the day before yesterday. I said, close your eyes. I said, imagine a red square, a yellow triangle, and a green circle. On the square, red square is the number 1, on the yellow triangle is the number 2, and the green circle is the number 3. Yeah? And then I asked her later in the afternoon, I said, what number does the yellow triangle have? And she couldn't tell me, because she couldn't close her eyes and see something in 3D in her head, or even 2D. That was 2D. I didn't make her do 3D like a Rubik's Cube. Whereas if I take a cube, I'm not sure about colours and numbers, but numbers or colours, I can, with many things up to a limit, turn things around in my head. I have ADHD. I wouldn't compare myself to Einstein, except in the fact that he also had ADHD. He couldn't remember his phone number like me. He couldn't remember his address like me. He wasn't very good at maths like me, but he was much better at maths than me. But he didn't solve E equals mc squared by mathematical equation. what he did was close his eyes or open them and just imagine, do it with the dumper, and imagine somebody moving on a train at light speed, and somebody stood standstill with a clock on the wall in a train station. And imagine what would happen to the clocks, the one in the train and the one at standstill, and the person in the train and the person at standstill. And if he was older, one was older than the other when they came back. And that was actually proved with an atomic clock many, many, many decades ago by somebody who took an atomic clock and drove many times around the world and left an atomic clock on the earth and compared them, and they came back and there was a slight difference, which proves time travel is possible. Anyway, when you look at the stars in the beginning of the universe at the center, you look to the Milky Way, you're looking into the middle of the universe, of the Big Bang, if the Big Bang is true. So if you see a star 4 light years away, it takes light at 196,000 kilometers a second, or 300 and something, 60,000 miles a second, I can't remember the exact number. It takes 4 years to reach your eyes. So if you saw Alpha Centauri blow up right now, it would have already happened 4 years ago. So you are looking at the past. You're in the present looking at the past. And you're actually, to that explosion, you are in the future. So anyway, as I said, in the next vlog, I'm going to do something worldly like this. But after I said 2 bites, I'm going to have 1 more bite for energy to talk. Because this talk has not really begun. This is a world reintroduction. With one of my most respected, my most respected human in human history. On Earth, behind me, and his 2 closest friends and students, Sariputra and Mokkallana, and with the Lord Buddha. I respect, whether I'm Buddhist or not, a multidisciplinarian, and knowledge, true knowledge is my goal, not religion. Because there is no true religion, all religions are one. Quote William Blake. I say Sir William Blake. Somebody asked me, why do you say Sir? I said, because to me he is a Sir. Not because the Queen bestowed something on him with a sword, like an OBE. Anyway, or Lord, I called him a Lord, because he was a Lord of wordsmithery and poetry and art, and he had the spiritual genius of which he speaks. And so that which I wish is the same as what my most respected human wished, is to awaken people, to lift the veils and see what is not secret, but is hidden in front of our eyes, yeah, and to awaken, which means liberation, of course. It means to be free, and it might mean to be immortal, but I don't know about that. I won't talk about that. So we shall begin now with a small prayer, and prayers are just, who knows if anybody can hear them, unless you have psychic powers and you can speak with the Tewada, with angelic or interdimensional intelligences, because it's the same thing. It's an angel, is an interdimensional intelligence, angelic intelligences. So who knows if they can hear? So what is a prayer? A prayer is something to tangjit man, to focus yourself and your resolve, to focus your resolve upon your goal, yeah, and to create a deep wish for something which develops the cause of evolving towards fulfilling that wish. Somebody once thought of a vacuum cleaner so he didn't have to sweep, and step by step, maybe he found somebody to help him, or maybe he did it himself, the vacuum cleaner manifested in this world. But all manifest things began as an idea, as imagination, image, imagine. So make an image. I said I could turn things around in my head and see them. Einstein did mental experiments. Sir Isaac Newton also had ADHD, yeah, and he did mental experiments. He would, because he had ADHD, he would forget in the short run. He might remember again in the long run when something triggers his memory, like me. So what he used to do, he was told to be left alone in a walled garden with gravel paths, and he would use his foot to just make symbols or little drawings and equations to remind himself of an idea he had. Because with ADHD, it's like having 4 TV channels on at the same time. So you have 4 concepts you want to talk about and explain, 4 realizations every second. And you can never get to write all of them, which is why I suspect Leonardo da Vinci also had ADHD, because although he completed many projects and was a genius in what he did, yeah, and a very strange person, and probably also a hermit. If not, he wouldn't have got so much work done. People ask me, how do you get so much work done? So I don't go out, I don't go to bars. Except lately, for some, you've seen some of my stuff on Facebook, maybe going out on bikes and stuff, but actually I stay home. And I remember listening to Bill Gates many years ago when I was poor, about how he got rich. And he said, well, when everybody else was out at the disco spending the money, I was at home saving my money and tapping around on the computer. Well, I don't just tap around on the computer, I contemplate and meditate. I try to live, but I don't do much. And if you want to know how to get rich, well, just don't spend money, just make it. But still live as simply as a monk, yeah? I'm sorry about the noise here. So anyway, we're going to start with a short prayer, and you can ignore any background sounds. And this prayer is not Buddhist. By me, before I was conditioned. This is me before I was conditioned. This little boy has no ill intent. He has helpfulness, he has mercy, he has trust, he has no mistrust, he has no belial, he has no trickery. He's pure as a white sheep. That's me. And look what the world has done to me. Yeah? People have seen me with a samurai sword, say, oh, somebody took my son away from me, what I'd do to them and stuff. And so I'm broken. The world broke me like it broke you. It made me think violent thoughts. It made me think, not that I would do them, but it made me think them, which is suffering. Because I also have PTSD. And after PTSD, with PTSD, if you freak out about something afterwards, you blame yourself and you sit there thinking how unskillful I was, which is proof of karma, regret. Do something, know you were unskillful. If you put your head on the pillow at night and you feel good about yourself, you were skillful that day. If you put your head on the pillow at night and you can't sleep because something's bothering you about what you said to somebody, or hurt their feelings, or it was wrong, or whatever, or you just lost your temper, you weren't skillful that day. That's regret, that's suffering, that's karma. If karma exists at least on the lowest level, yes, on that level. I'm looking at the wrong side, the camera's over here. So we shall begin with a prayer by me, a pure prayer. And I don't know what I'm going to say. First, let us focus and try to remove and expel all other thoughts, even though that's pretty difficult and some will invade, more to some and less to others, depending on their practice or focus. And may we all accumulate the wish to be truly enlightened. And may we ask ourselves, looking in the mirror, metaphorically or truly, physically, seriously, and answer ourselves honestly, and look ourselves in the eye and say, do I really wish to be wise, or do I wish to keep repeating these same mistakes over and over and over again, those which bring to at least regret, if not further problems? Do I? Do I really, or am I just going to say yes and carry on as usual? Or am I really asking myself for real? Do I really want to be wise? Ask yourself in your deepest heart of hearts. Do you really wish to be wise and awakened? Ask yourself, for real. Well, of course I do. If you look deep enough, the answer is only one. But you might not find that answer if you do not look deep enough. So dig deep into your soul. Do you wish to be truly wise, or do you wish to think you are wise? Because the wise man knows he is an idiot and knows nothing. And so if you wish to be wise, start at the beginning and realize that just like a baby who is pure, not like an adult who's screwed up, you know nothing yet. So return now and let us know nothing, and assume that all assumptions, excuse the pun, that all assumptions we have made to date are erroneous, which means false, or inaccurate, which means incomplete, not completely accurate, or subject to context. For example, too many cooks spoil the broth. Yes, but if it's a party, the more the merrier. And so if it's a party, too many cooks do not spoil the broth, unless it's the guys in the party are doing the cooking. But too many cooks spoil the broth. It's just a metaphor for meaning too many people spoil the intimacy of the matter, or can spoil the broth. Yeah, spoil the whole thing, situation. But in a party, a lot of people is sometimes very good, not always, if it's a private party. So it's all context-based. Too many cooks spoil the broth. People hear it, they accept that as truth. Yeah? Well, not necessarily. So why don't you think further? If somebody says the more the merrier, you should say, well, not necessarily. The other day somebody said to me, this is the best way to lift up a heavy bike if it falls over. If you saw the clip of me doing my classic fail, falling off a Ducati, yeah? Don't ask me why I bought that. Because I don't know. Well, I do, because I have another bike that won't ride in all weather and the Ducati would. Anyway, yeah? You see me falling off and making fun of myself. Instead of feeling depressed about it, that's two ways of looking about it. I could have got angry that a brand new $15,000 Ducati got scratched and I fell over, and I have watch my feet, but I have a hole in my leg. Did hurt myself actually, but if you saw the classic file, you'd see it just fell off. Anyway, that's all conditioned because this guy doesn't know, which is why in the clip you can see that instead of getting angry, I just got up and walked away and left the bike. I was actually walking to switch off the camera. I walked back to the bike, but I didn't care, and I was actually laughing. And my brother said, you're 57 now, bones break easily. You're not a spring chicken. Stop doing that. The thing is, I said, look, I promised myself at 5 years old that I would never grow up. And when I was 10, I had a scrambler, and we used to go to the sand quarry. And if I did a double backflip and fell off, and half the bike got twisted, we'd twist the front wheel back into line, and you'd laugh and say, can you do that again, brother? So I can film it, so I can photograph it, or so I can see it again, because we didn't have videos in those days. The 8-track video recorder came later. I think we did actually, we did. But they just come, my mum had one, but we didn't have it. So he didn't even have a camera, he was just joking. Can you do that again, our kid? In Yorkshire. Can you do that again, our kid, so I can film it? Can you do it again so I can film it? So I said to him, look, in the old days, before the world screwed us up, and we cared about politics and this, that and the other, and Bovid and God knows what, yeah, and restrictions and 9/11 and God knows what, taxes and paying bills and going to work and having to go to school and I don't know what, and being indoctrinated one thing after the other, we didn't really give a toss, did we? We used to just laugh. I mean, now I see somebody slip up and I just think, serious, does he have a insurance policy? Ask me to go do an insurance policy. I'm 3 words into their explanation. I just say, stop bullshitting me. Go away. This is just all a scam. Every business in the world is a scam, like Captain Sensible said. But life is a con. Everybody's just trying to get money out of you all the time. And lying or just saying things they believe themselves to be true and just following the narrative they've been fed. And so, may we awaken from this and realize that we are being controlled and manipulated, and slowly may we connect with nature's true frequency and algorithm, and may we reach the understanding which some people know as the 7 principles of Hermes, some people know as the secret of the Master Mason, some people know as illumination, some people know as the lifting of the veils, some people know as the attainment of ultimate knowledge and wisdom. Ultimate knowledge is not wisdom. If ultimate knowledge is achieved without wisdom, that's dangerous. Because ethics come with wisdom, not knowledge. Yeah. However, ethics, you do not need to teach to this version of me. Because this version of me knows nothing of ethics, and he doesn't have anything in him that a conditioned person like me, my older self, the child is father to the son, yeah? This beautiful baby gave birth to what I am now, but what made me what I am now is society and its conditioning, yeah? So, may we now enter into a moment of blocking out and knowing nothing, and remember looking at clouds and listening to the bees in the garden with no TV or mobile phone, and being just as entertained at looking at the intricacies of a daisy. Because when asked what it feels like to become enlightened, there's a legend that says the Buddha answered, it's something like being in a state of constant fascination with the wonders of the inconceivable nature of nature. Yeah, with the wonder of everything, sorry. And if you ask anybody who's taken LSD, and in the proper sense, in the spiritual sense, and inner voyage sense, then they will also tell you the same. And anybody who has truly meditated in a cave, like myself, or who has attained jhana, absorption, and various yana and states that are mentioned in Buddhism and in other traditions, such as Freemasonry, alchemy, Rosicrucianism, Hermeticism, and many, many other traditions, including Wicca, and including ancient South American, Aztec, Inca, and American Indian traditions and Aboriginal traditions, this exists everywhere and in China. So now we shall go silent. Level 1 of 4. We shall not reach 4 today. Level 1 is almost blocked out with only certain thoughts and a focus that will bring a feeling of rapture. With level 1 you can speak more clearly and more reasonably. And for somebody with ADHD like myself, that is necessary to speak the Dharma. If not, one would have to invoke somebody else to speak, such as a Tevada, an angelic intelligence, which is the supposed meaning of the Lucy mask, but unfortunately has become a bit of a tricky-dicky business in Thailand. That does not mean to say there are not people who cannot communicate with angelic intelligences. It just means that for everyone, there's about 1 million who open up an office and make some business out of it. That's all. Just because you have charlatans, one bad apple makes the whole basket rot or what? Well, not necessarily, but I would say the whole basket is full of bad apples and you might find one good one in there. I'm talking about Rusi, because real Rusi don't go to Singapore and take money for Sakyand, or they just help people and mostly stay alone and help themselves, because you have to help yourself before you can help anybody else. And until you become enlightened, or at least achieve a level of wisdom and ability to help others, what's the point in trying to help others? You help yourself first. That's what the Buddha tried to teach as well. Help yourself and then help others. God helps him who helps himself. That does not mean steal from others. That means he who makes effort to improve his own life, and his own happiness, inner happiness and emotional state. Because heaven is not a place. I'd like to dedicate that to Benedicta Valentina, by the way, who nearly always comments on my videos on YouTube. because you said something I agree with about heaven and hell, which you misunderstood when I was talking about karma, thinking that I was saying karma makes you go to heaven and hell. It does not. You are living in heaven or hell, or just normal right now. You are either disturbed or at peace, or just happy or grid, or just glad, just nowhere, limbo, or just in life, lost in life, completely lost like a robot as a consumer. So, what do we look for in life? We spend our whole lives lost in the past, lost in the future. Sorry about this. I'm taking some screenshots for the thumbnail for the video, which I'll turn into a cartoon. What conditioned us? What stopped us from remaining as pure and kind? We all love babies. I look at myself there and I even kiss my own photo. I say, good boy, you were a good boy. Look what I've become. A person who don't take any poop from anyone and who's quite willing to defend himself in any way. Which means potentially don't mess with me. But is that what the world's done to me? When actually I was a monk. I gave up ahimsa kamma, non-violence. I gave up wanting to harm and hurt or have revenge on other people. Give up all of these things we feel in life towards others, right? We feel these things in life towards others, right? The Buddha didn't after his enlightenment, and neither did Sariputta and Moggallana or any of the other arahants. But what is an arahant? That is a Buddhist concept. I need more energy. So speaking about an arahant and needing more energy, what is an arahant? Well, an arahant is not a monk. A arahant is a Buddha. A Buddha means awoken, awake, and an arahant is awake. So an arahant is self-awakened, either through the teachings of the Buddha, which would make him a Pratipateka Buddha or a Pratyeka Buddha, or through himself, because there were no teachings or teacher present on the planet he was born on in his life. So he found out himself, which would make him a Samputto, a Samma Buddha, meaning a Buddha who has become a Buddha without the aid of anyone or any book or any teaching. There's only apparently been 5 according to legend. 4 have been. The 4th was, the first was Katsapa, yeah? The 4th was Sakyamuni Buddha, yeah? Which is this Buddha here behind me, yeah? The Buddha, yeah? Sakyamuni. And the 5th one hasn't come yet. He's a future Buddha. He's called Pratyasi Maitreya, which means Maitreya Buddha, exists in Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism. So, what is an arahant? It's not a monk, because you don't need to be a monk to become an arahant. There are arahants on many planets and have been in many times. There were 3 before this Buddha. This Buddha initiated the religion of Buddhism. Therefore, the 3 arahants before him were not Buddhists. Right? Buddhism came into existence with the 4th Buddha of the 5 Buddhas, the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, Jhana Buddhas. Why they're called Dhyani Buddhas? Zen, Dhyana or Jhana means absorption into the 4th or 8th level, depending how you count it, because you have entry and full absorption. So they split the 4th into 2, make it 8. That's typical English, human bilateral, what do you call that, binary thought, dualistic thought, which prevents us from seeing truth, because we see one side or the other. We have a perspective, which is conditioned. Unlike this guy, who does not have a perspective. accept what he sees without naming it. He doesn't even know that's a rocking horse. He just enjoys the sensation and the fluffiness of what we call its mane. But it's not the rocking horse's mane to me back there. That is not the rocking horse's mane. Those are not my pants and my t-shirt. I do know one thing, looking at my face. One thing I always did have from a very young age was that I've only trusted those who are close to me. But I think that is DNA instinct, to stick with the pack. So that is not an impurity of a baby. That I'm looking slightly like, who's taking the photo? Or what are they doing? Because I've never seen a camera before. So there's a slight look of suspicion on my face. And that is one of the first basic conditionings, of course. But it is a DNA conditioning. So we are also born with DNA conditioning. Fight or flight, yeah? We hear a bang for the first time as a baby, the baby will cry. He's never heard a bang before, yeah? You give him some spicy curry. My son, I gave him some really, I didn't give him, he stole some, really spicy yellow southern Thai curry from my bowl when he was 1.5. And he ate almost all of it. Never even noticed it was spicy. 3 years later, he couldn't even eat the spicy tomato sauce that's not even spicy. So that's conditioning. A baby does not notice if a beast, unless if a bee sting's painful. After that he'll be afraid of bees, that's conditioning. But he won't notice some things. And a baby will slowly start to notice. When a baby is born, he won't see the table, the TV and the wall. He will just see a blur of images when his eyes first open, before he's conditioned. And slowly but surely, as he becomes conditioned and develops the human condition, he will start to separate that single blur, that cloud of molecules, into separate perceived objects, which are not really separate, but which we think are, like the TV and the TV screen and the buttons on the TV. Or is it just a TV all in all? How much can you break it down? You do the same in meditation, breaking down the 5 aggregates. Yeah, you break down a landscape. Is it a landscape? No, it's a forest, a lake, and a mountain range. So they're not just it's not a mountain range, it's a composition of mountains. Or it's not a forest, it's a composition, aggregation of trees, it's aggregates. Or it's not a tree, it's an aggregation of trunk, roots, branches, and leaves. Or it's not a leaf, it's an aggregation of veins, chlorophyll, what would you call that? Fiber, and clouds of molecules composed in different ways in order to create those different substances and chemicals. No, it's not chlorophyll. It's actually a composition of molecular substances within which they're not also molecules, because they're composed of quarks, gluons, strangenesses, and God knows what, and so on and so on and so on. And so there's no such thing as a landscape, no such thing as a forest, no such thing as a tree. A table made out of wood has atoms and spaces between them, distributed in a certain manner. And the plank of wooden floor made from the same tree also has the same distribution of particles and spaces between. And so does the wooden wall. So where does the foot where it hits the floor, the foot of the table and the chairs, and the floor where it touches the wall, they all have the same spaces between the molecules. What makes the table become the floor and the floor become the wall? Because actually it's just one cloud of molecules, one single cloud of molecules. So what separates it into a table, chairs, a floor and a wall and a ceiling and a door? What separates it? Our minds. But is it really separate? No, we are not separate. We are connected biologically, chemically, atomically, yeah, connected to each other biologically and chemically, yeah, and we're connected to the universe atomically. The cosmos is within us, as Carl Sagan said. We are stardust, yeah. He also said that we are a way for the cosmos to know itself, which I believe myself. I think that we are the eyes of the world, and that the whole plan of the cosmos since the Big Bang was to develop life and the conditions for life, so that the cosmos could look back on itself to see what itself looks like. We are its mirror. Beauty or reality. Life is beauty, looking at itself in a mirror. But you are beauty, and you are the mirror. And so, why do we assume that we need to go to school to learn something they want us to learn, and learn nationalism and how to sing the national anthem, then pick up a gun in their name and go die in war, or go to school and university to be paid a measly sum for some work you're going to do that's going to generate 30 times that money at least, if not 100 times as much, for the company you work for, and be in debt with a mortgage and paying your parents back for your education, and then you reach 50 and you got a pension, and what you got? You've lost your life looking for professional success, the things you want. When you get the material objects, like I have a speedboat, a Harley, a Ducati, you get them, you think they are going to bring you some kind of pleasure, but actually the pleasure is only momentary. Yeah, I fell off my Ducati, it got scratched, it was brand new. If I'd have wanted to, I could have got peed off. I didn't, because I prefer to be him than him. So I might look like him, but my mission in life is to going back to be like that, arahant. Because all babies are arahants. They are pure. Arahant isn't on a flying carpet. Some arahants have psychic powers, as you might call them. I just call them powers of physics that normal humans don't know yet, and how to control them. So, why was I talking about eating and arahants? Because, and monks, my arahants are not necessarily a monk. First of all, because 3 Buddhas before Sakyamuni Buddha, Buddhism didn't exist. So obviously it's possible to become enlightened without being a Buddhist or a monk. Secondly, it's also said by everybody who understands Buddhism in Thailand and in the teaching of the Buddha that you don't have to be a monk. That has nothing to do with it. It has to do with your power of realization and your power to transform. Might be harder if you're not a monk, but it might be just as easy, because these days monks have to pay their own electricity bills and water bills and build temples and raise money and all sorts of business, go do lots of business for the local people and stuff, and charities. And in the old days their only business was to stay in the cave and stay away from people and enlighten themselves. It was only after a long time that one monk asked the Buddha that many people who came down, when the monks would meet once a month for the Patimokkha, from living solitarily in their caves, would sit together for 3 days and listen to the Buddha recite the Patimokkha, which were the rules of the monks, which didn't exist at the beginning, but they did then. So that's another story, how the Buddha, why the Buddha had to make a load of rules in the first place, because at the beginning there were no rules. It was obvious which rules, how to behave. There were no rules. It was only when people forgot how to behave and started doing things that they shouldn't be doing as a monk that the Buddha began to make rules. So anyway, one rule of the monk, yeah, so you don't have to be a monk or a Buddhist to become a pure awakened being or an arahant, right? or a sotapanna, a stream enterer, or a sagitakami, a once returner, or an anakami, a never returner, or an arahant, a fully enlightened Buddha, or enlightened, awakened being of this universe, whatever race you are, or whatever planet you live on, or whatever ethnicity you are. So, eating. A monk, a Buddhist monk, is not allowed to eat after 12 midday. He's also only allowed to eat 1 or 2 meals before that, and not after. Nothing. Only drink water, not alcohol. Water, nothing you can chew. Some people drink soya milk. Some people say, no, that's because soya beans, you can chew them. And say, well, it's milk, it's water. You can also chew tea leaves, but this is tea, water. So argue that out yourselves. That's an argument of stupid monks who are conditioned. But arahants did not keep that rule of eating before midday, and only 1 meal for some lineages and up to 2 for some others, but before midday. What an arahant did was, if his body didn't need any energy, he didn't eat anything, which is how they used to go off for months and months in the forest on tudong on their own, because there was nobody to make offerings. And so he would just pick a few berries and say, I'm feeling dizzy. I feel dizzy sometimes because I don't eat, unless my body needs it. I don't sit there thinking about lobsters and looking at pictures of food on Instagram till my mouth waters. That is, a monk doesn't do that, and I don't do that because I used to be a monk, and I'm not going to throw away what I learned how to do when I was a monk just because I disrobed. All the things you developed as a monk when you disrobe, you don't want to throw away everything you learned, you want to keep it. So I did. I might have thrown off the robe, taken off the robe, didn't throw it off, I'd taken off the robe, but I didn't take off my rules or what I had learned or my practice. I did not remove my practice, I just removed my robes and adjusted my practice according to my new life as a layperson. So why do I eat more than once a day or only once a day? And why do I hardly eat at all? Well, I hardly eat at all because I don't need food unless my body says I do. And it's like, you don't fill up your car with petrol unless you need to. If you've got petrol in your car, you keep going. If all of a sudden your car's going to run out of petrol and you can feel it starting to shudder, that's like my body feels weak. I need a bite of that sandwich there, right? Which I just took. But I took out of necessity, not out of desire. Because you have to douse out those desires. Those desires are what lead you around, like a boat on the ocean without a rudder, or a cork in the storm on the ocean, being beaten about by the waves in any direction it wants to push you. You don't want to be pushed in that direction, do you? You want free will, don't you? Don't you want free will? I would say you want free will. Does free will exist? Well, you'd have to look at instinct and chemical reactions and how conditioning causes our human social behavior. Excuse me. Social behavior, yeah? That's deep. And that's why every person has to make their own investigations and contemplations in that, yeah? But one thing is for sure, that the assumption that we have to live within a system that we've been taught to live in, and that we have to go to school, or we'll go to prison if we don't send our children to school. Rubbish, you can homeschool them, you just have to prove to the government that your homeschooling meets the minimum standards of government schooling, which is very easy to do. You can do better than that. So you don't need to let the government indoctrinate your children. You can homeschool them according to, teach them how to have their own views at best, not according to your views. That's indoctrination as well. I always tell my son, believe what you want when you're older. I'll explain what I know. I'll tell you what I believe, but don't you believe it, because you have to decide for yourself when you're old enough to think everything properly. because everybody thinks they're right and nobody really knows. That's when he asked me about religion. Yeah? Tell him I respect the Buddha and listen to his teachings, but don't choose a religion or anything. Grow up first and then see what you think. Because religious organizations are usually set up by ruling parties who put their relatives and officials into the highest positions of religion, of the religious organization of whichever nation, and then use that to control the people with, along with law, police forces, soldiers, upon which stand the law writers and the politicians, above whom stand the bankers who loan the money and the bonds to the countries and have all the gold, and above whom stand various groups of people who have remained in the shadows over years. And part of waking up is also learning worldly matters to see what is behind this world and who is controlling this world. Knowing that won't stop the fact you're going to get old, sick and die. And so the most important thing is to learn these things: joy, happiness, compassion, faith, not blind faith, but faith in yourself, faith in goodness, yeah, faith in people without blind faith, right? Don't trust anybody, let people prove themselves, yeah, and wisdom, yeah, integrity, purity, and look at photos of yourself when you were young and remember just how good you were, and remember the mood you were in, remember the state of mind and being and heart of yourself as a child, as a baby, because that's who you really are. The child is father to the man, yeah, because he came first, I came after. Father comes first, son comes after. The child is father to the man, right? And so, I think it's time for us to wake up, and we should stop the assumption that we have to actually take any notice of people who come out on TV and speak some rules, or a website of something that calls itself some ministry and states this, or some money-making organization that's a mafia, like the WHO or the UN, whose interests are not of ours at all. They're just for trade and warmongery, and discuss things to pretend that they care. We don't have to obey these people. Energy, I need. If not, I wouldn't need it. Only when you need. Not out of desire, because desire makes you blind. It makes you run around wasting your life. You waste a third of your life sleeping, a third of your life waiting for buses, or waiting for an interview, or waiting for this or that, waiting for somebody, waiting for something to happen, waiting for things to change. And the other third of your life is waking. And most of that you spend with your thoughts lost in the past and the future, or worrying or freaking out about what's happening right now. And so I think what we should really do is take no notice and civil disobedience, and realize you do not have to obey. You did not sign at birth that you accept anybody's laws and rules, or that you are a citizen of anywhere except your own sovereign citizen, sovereign individual, not sovereign citizen, sorry. Sovereign individual, meaning you are your own empire, your own country, boss of yourself, and so long as you don't step on somebody else's sovereignty, meaning harm somebody else or bother somebody else, you have the right to do with your own life as you wish, no matter what they say. Who are they? It's not my dad. Boris isn't my dad, Putin isn't my dad, neither is Xi Jinping or whatever his name is, or Kim Jong-un, or all these people, or Lee Hsien Loong of Singapore, who's anti-gay, but actually he himself is gay. But He's also a very, very bigoted person. He's a despot. He owns Singapore. He shuts his own people up. He kills his own people, actually. Can't be proved, so it's covered up, but he does. If somebody gets bad enough. One guy was burnt in a house fire who used to use the speaker's corner. He even accuses his own family, who run away from him. Anyway, worrying about those narratives, whether it's COVID, whether it's injections, whether it's the Ukraine, is a narrative to keep you, to stop you from stopping. Because the Buddha said, I have stopped. Stop wasting my time on all of that. Because there's no time, we're going to die. Maybe tomorrow when you walk across the road, away from a heart attack in 30 seconds. I might even die on this video. Anyway, that means live. Wake up and live, like Bob Marley said. Wake up and live now. And forget the rest, forget what they say. Don't care about it. If you don't want to put a mask on, don't do it. If you want to put a mask on, do it. If you want to believe in COVID, believe in it. If you don't want to believe in it, don't believe in it. Just don't bother anybody else and live your life how you want and the best you can. And for me, the best I can do now is to meditate a little bit, to focus my mind, and then probably have a swim with my dog, because I don't swim with him enough and would be real life. And to sit outside and listen to the crickets and the birds in the nature, instead of hearing the buzzing of the refrigerator and the fan, which subconsciously is actually bothering us all the time. So you should study frequency and energy and vibration, wave and particle, and understand that even these words that are coming to you now are protons flying through the air at different frequencies, like this, slow and high, big and long waves. If you draw it for a human to see, there's no waves really, it's just vibrations. It's rotation more than anything, and it's an electromagnetic field it passes through. Electricity does not pass through the copper wires. It passes through the electromagnetic field that exists in the empty space between the wires. And so do the photons from the sun, photons of light. They can only travel through the emptiness of space because there's an electromagnetic field there. And that's what they use as their road to travel on. So electromagnetism, vibration, rotation, change in frequency, which means change in pulse, how fast or slow something pulses, like Morse code, yeah? Yeah? How fast in time, you know time? You know time? Boop, boop. How would that be? Boop, boop. Boop. Boop, boop. Boop. That's the word time in Morse code. Long and short, doors and dars, yeah? Boop, boop. It's T, yeah? Sorry. Boop, boop. It's T. Boop, boop. Is I. Boop, boop is M, and boop is E. Yeah? So even time is measured by frequency, short and long waves, or short and long sounds. Yeah, and it gets shorter and longer by degree, which is when Freemasonry you have 33 degrees. Actually, no, you have more than that, but anyway. Anybody below 32nd degree does not know. And many people up to 33 degree do not know what lies above. And many people on the first degree, the third degree, sorry, not have a first degree, because that is entered. How long is a piece of string? Where does the city meet the suburbs? So the path to arahantship, where does it split into 4 stages? And where do they separate each stage? Where do you draw the line? I mean, if you draw the lines on a map between 2 countries, if you went and stood there and said, is it this side of this tree or that side of this tree, this red line? You'd have to argue about it all day, because it's not that exact. It's not down to the square centimetre, it's down to the square metre maybe, or square 5 metres. So separateness does not exist. We are all connected, and part of waking up is realizing we've been conditioned, remembering who we really are, and reviving purity, and cleaning out the conditioned mud on your windshield, which is just socially conditioned shit, religiously conditioned shit, politically conditioned shit, government conditioned shit. And even the word shit is conditioned shit. It's not even a nice word. And he doesn't know it. And when my son was about that old and I said something like shit or the F word, he said, "Daddy, why do you use such bad words?" And he made me feel so bad. But he taught me something, because he made me think further and further until I realized why. And that was one of the hundreds of reasons that has brought me to self-deconditioning. So this doesn't reveal the secrets of how to do it. But if you should realize that it's all imaginary, that you have a government and you have to obey them, and these are rules and that's the law, why are you making those assumptions? It's all their imagination. To me that means nothing. Means nothing. So I shall try to define this more, point by point, in small vlogs, to explain to you how everything has gone wrong. And I shall also add this as part 2 to my playlist of how we got into this mess in the first place, which means humanity. How did we leave Eden, so to speak, to the fall into this horrible situation we are in, where there has never been a time in memorable history that there was not a war somewhere on earth and atrocities happening. Yeah, and why humans do that to each other. Because if I was him and you were all your child version, with the purity, but not, you can't drive a car, you can't fill out a form, you've got the adult ability, but you have the eyes of a child and the purity of a child. I bought a ring the other day for about $70, and I gave him the money and he gave me the ring, and I walked away, and that was it. But if I buy a car, I have to register this and the insurance, and I have to do or I rent a house, I have to do a sales or a rental contract, and that has to be handed into the government, and blah blah blah. I never understood that then, and I still don't understand it now, because I think, why can't people just be trustworthy enough that no such laws are necessary, that I can just give him the money, he gives me the motorbike or the car or the house, and he goes away and never comes back and says, this is mine, because he doesn't have any proof on paper. What's a piece of paper apart from something you can wipe your ass on or write on? Or paint on and put on the wall as a poster. Probably think of a few other things. You probably use it to make a paper mache image or something, like the Buddha. But that's it, you know. So I'm actually pretty non-conditioned anyway, because I decided at 5 years old, as I said at the beginning, that I would never grow up. So anyway, those are part of the unorthodox thoughts of John Spencer. Will be added to my Dear Diary playlist if you want to subscribe to that. Otherwise, you can subscribe to other playlists which I will add it to, such as A Different Way of Seeing Things, I think it's called, and Dear Diary. So there you go. Ajahn Spencer, speaking in front of one of my most respected and my greatest teacher, the Buddha, about my own unorthodox thoughts, seemingly anarchistic, seemingly non-accepting, and those of the sovereign individual. And I would say, if this interests you, this talk, and the word sovereign individual confuses you, please search YouTube for the Sovereign Individual Book Talk, or on Google and you'll find the whole book. If you write Sovereign Individual PDF, free download, or just Sovereign Individual PDF, you'll find it. And listen to the book talk on YouTube, because it will explain to you a lot about what's happening today and how people are moving towards slow enlightenment. Slow. But society and the internet right now is trying to prevent it from happening, those who control it. And I'm here to try and prevent them from preventing it from happening, and to help you awaken as I awaken, because I'm not awakened yet. But the process of awakening, nature has told me, because I sit outside a lot and I listen, and I'm doing again what I used to do when I was a monk, and it's coming back to me. So, perhaps confusing, but I hope this prepares you for what you are about to receive in my upcoming talks. Ajahn Spencer, signing off.